Jordan executes 2 terror prisoners, and its king vows an American Old West-style campaign of frontier justice against ISIS. This is Special Report. Good evening, I'm Brett Baer. Welcome to Washington. The world is still coming to terms with the horror it witnessed yesterday, the burning alive of a Jordanian pilot by radical Islamic terrorists. That video has prompted an outpouring of disgust and sympathy, and also calls for blood by many in the Middle East. We have Fox team coverage tonight. Shepard Smith in Amman, Jordan, with what the people of that country are saying about their martyred hero and the way forward. Jennifer Griffin at the Pentagon with what the U.S. could do to help Jordan fight back. But we begin with Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry and renewed questions about President Obama's leadership in the fight against ISIS. Good evening, Ed.
Good evening, Brett. The horrific execution of the Jordanian pilot was a game changer for King Abdullah, who's signaling that he's stepping up his efforts against the terror group. But President Obama is signaling status quo for the White House strategy. President Obama went forward with his schedule today as if it was business as usual, meeting with dreamers to tout his executive action on immigration and throw out another veto threat to Republicans.
And I am confident that I can uphold that veto.
While Press Secretary Josh Earnest would not say whether the administration supports King Abdullah's decision to kill 2 terrorists held in Jordanian prisons.
I don't have a specific reaction to the news overnight that a couple of individuals who'd been convicted of crimes related to terrorism, that they'd been executed.
Republican John McCain charged that's a sign of an administration whose strategy to degrade and destroy ISIS is failing.
Let there be no doubt, we still do not have a viable strategy to counter ISIL. And if you're not winning in war, you are losing.
McCain chaired the confirmation hearing for Ash Carter, the president's nominee to be the new defense secretary. Carter told senators ISIS is the most immediate threat to U.S. national interest and pushed back on McCain's claim.
I believe I understand our strategy.
McCain fired off a letter signed by every Republican and Democrat on the Armed Services Committee, demanding the administration urgently provide more weapons to Jordan that the king told lawmakers yesterday he desperately needs to step up the campaign against ISIS. Yet after saying the president is ironclad in his support for the king, Earnest repeatedly refused to say whether the White House will back more military aid.
Is there anything the president is committed to do? Is there anything to step up the campaign against ISIS at all from the White House?
Well, Ed, we have talked about how these kinds of ongoing efforts are going to be difficult, and that it's going to be difficult to measure success or failure in one-day increments. What we're focused on is the longer-term arc.
Critics believe the president should be leading that effort, and some suggest the strategy will not work without ground troops.
It's not going to happen from the air. You have a consensus by all experts here in Europe, in the Middle East. As long as we don't have an area inside Syria or Iraq, and most likely from the Jordanian borders on, where you're going to have free Syrian army or free Arabs against ISIS covered by an air force, this is not going to happen.
Now, late today, the president did meet here at the White House with Muslim leaders, but aides stressed that this was a broader conversation, not just about terror, but that they also talked about middle-class economics as well as the president's health care law. Brett?
Ed Henry live on the North Lawn. Ed, thank you. One congressman says Jordan's king channeled American movie tough guy Clint Eastwood in vowing revenge for the killing. Such bravado is not uncommon for the king, who has a storied history of walking tall in a tough neighborhood. National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin looks at the man and what the U.S. may be able to do to help him.
King Abdullah's first public appearance after returning home to Jordan was with the head of his military chiefs.
The response of Jordan will be heard by the whole world, and as we said yesterday, the response of Jordan will be tough, earth-shaking.
After cutting short his trip to Washington, the king prepared to step up his airstrikes. This as U.S. officials confirmed that the United Arab Emirates had stopped flying combat missions over Syria in December. Military sources say they fear a downed plane. Privately, the UAE has complained the U.S. needs to position search and rescue assets closer to northern Iraq.
But I don't think people should take away from that announcement that the commitment from the Emiratis and other Arab countries in the region to this broader coalition has waned in any way.
Now King Abdullah has vowed to take the lead. He is the 53-year-old son of King Hussein. He ascended to the throne on February 7, 1999, educated at Deerfield Academy, Sandhurst, and Oxford, as well as Georgetown University. King Abdullah commanded Jordan's special forces and is a Cobra attack helicopter pilot.
Retribution. He said that there will be retribution from this. He even referenced Unforgiven, the Clint Eastwood movie. They're going to increase their air sorties. They're going to increase people on the ground. They're going to get more Arab countries with them now, and hopefully they will lead from the front and they will crush ISIS. I think that's what's happened here. At least that is what the king said that they're going to do.
As of February 2nd, of the 2,264 airstrikes carried out against ISIS, the U.S. has conducted 81% of the strikes in Iraq and Syria. The Arab members of the coalition have conducted just 19% of the airstrikes, according to CENTCOM figures. The State Department pledged $1 billion a year for the next 3 years to aid Jordan and ease its refugee problem. U.S. lawmakers said the king wants more military aid.
In the short term, he needs help. He intends to push back against ISIS, but he needs more fuel, he needs more bomb, he needs more equipment, he needs less bureaucratic red tape in Washington that slows down getting these supplies to him.
Senior U.S. defense officials tell us some in the military see the need to expedite Jordan's request for more sophisticated military equipment. Senate Armed Services Chairman John McCain pledged to do more to fulfill the king's request, blaming the king's frustration on a huge bureaucratic bottleneck in the State Department. Brett.
Jennifer Griffin live at the Pentagon. Jennifer, thank you. My colleague Shepard Smith is in Amman, Jordan tonight. Shep, thanks for joining us. Tell us what you're seeing and hearing there.
A bit of unity, Brett. It's a quiet city, Amman, today, and has been tonight. Very much a sense of mourning. There were demonstrations, as you saw this morning, when the king returned to speak with his military chief. He has been very strong in his words, and now here they wait for actions. Of course, there had been a divide in this nation, and that's not to say that the kingdom is not still divided on some level. So many here are from the Palestinian territories and see a divide with the United States and Israel on one side, and in some ways Jordan on another. In addition, there's a sense that over time the Jordanian people have been sort of left out of the mix here. Some saying ISIS is not our fight. Well, today in the media and even the Muslim Brotherhood came forward to say, we are against ISIS. This brutality cannot stand. We as Jordanians must stand together. If that holds, it's relatively new, and if it stays in large percentages, the king may have all kinds of room to act.
You know, Shep, a lot of people forget that Jordan doesn't have the natural resources that, let's say, Saudi Arabia or UAE or Kuwait has. They've got an economy that is really being strained by a refugee problem from Syria that is huge.
The United Nations estimates 1.3 million refugees. I think those close to the royal family here would suggest it's a couple 100,000 more than that, and no matter what the numbers, it is an extreme challenge for this nation to deal with. It's also been flying, as Jennifer mentioned, so many sorties over areas of trouble nearby, as many as any other nation, for instance, except the United States and Syria. So when the king says we need bombs, we need help, we need assistance in cutting through the red tape, he means it. The question is whether there's the will and fortitude to get that sort of thing done, whether the coalition can come together in such a way that Jordan can lead from the front, as one of your interviews said, and whether Jordan can, in the end, potentially at least, use some sort of ground forces. There's some reporting from the Washington Post and beyond that is under consideration here. It's widely believed to be a trial balloon, and if the king speaks tomorrow, one wonders if that might be a little tickle around the conversation.
Yeah, is there a sense there early on that this is a turning point in this whole deal, and that Arab countries may join behind the king in a different formation of this coalition?
There's a feeling that this could very well be a turning point, and the video that you see out of this region shows somewhat of a turning point, a sense of unity, pictures of unity that we haven't seen before. With history as our guide, though, often those pictures and those scenes are louder on the close heels of a disaster and a catastrophe like it just happened with the murdering of this pilot. Whether that remains for days and weeks and months, long enough for the king to get this going, well, we don't know yet.
Shep, as always, thank you very much. We'll check in throughout your trip there early Thursday morning there in Amman, Jordan. Up next, Jeb Bush makes his first big economic speech as a prospective presidential candidate. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 5 in New York with a deadly commuter train crash in Valhalla, about 20 miles north of the city. 5 people on the train were killed when it slammed into an SUV stopped on the tracks. The driver of that vehicle also died. 15 people remain hospitalized tonight. Fox 11 in Los Angeles says California state lawmakers announce a new effort to increase vaccination rates. This comes after dozens have fallen ill from a measles outbreak traced to Disneyland. Representatives will propose legislation to change state immunization requirements to target a small but vocal movement among parents who obtain personal belief exemptions for their children. And this is a live look at Detroit from our affiliate there. Fox 2, looks like a foggy Detroit. The big story there tonight is video of a Coast Guard rescue. 2 members go into the Betsy River Channel near Lake Michigan in Frankfort to rescue the stranded Labrador pup. They got him. Everybody got out safely. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.